All right, we're going to call the City of Olivet Planning and Community Design Commission to order for August 1st, 2024. Acting Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Robert Jagel,
Present.
Brian Lewis,
Present.
Tim Spiegelglass is absent. Petrie Powell. Present. Daniel Rosenberg is absent. Sam Wallach.
Present.
Laura Ragsdale, present.
Great. Thank you. Just to call out, we also have in attendance the Carlos Trejo, Director, and Don Doty, Senior Planner, and Council Member and Mayor, Missy Waldman. So thank you very much. And just to call out to everyone there, thank you for attending. And we do have some people online. Just a reminder for those of you who are online, if you need to speak during any of these comments coming up, please raise your hand and you'll be let in. And when the appropriate time comes for your area to be spoken on, you'll be admitted so you can then present at that time. We're going to move on to public comments. Just a reminder for public comments, we're looking for comments that are not part of the agenda and any other topic. So if your item is going to be covered in another part of the meeting, please wait and to address it at that time. We ask everyone to limit their public comments to about 2 minutes. They will need to come up when recognized and speak in the microphone, give their name, give their address, and speak to that, and we'll go from there. So at this point, we'll open it up for public comments from anyone in the audience or online. Does anyone have anything?
Chairman, I do have two people online. I do know one is for one of the presentation items, but if you would like to speak before the commission on any other general item, if you can just show the raise of hands located on your Zoom link. Okay, Chairman, I see none.
Okay. All right. We will then move on to new business. And item A is 701 Villa Capri Court. And Carlos, are you presenting to us? Or?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Chairman, before going through, just to provide a brief overview of the review procedures that the commission does, just everybody to get some general information. There are 4 general types of reviews the City of Olivet Planning and Community Design Commission conducts. The commission is a merger of the city's former Community Design Review Board, which was the Architectural Review Board, and then the traditional Planning and Zoning Commission. They were merged back in the 90s into one, and that's where we get our extensive name, Planning and Community Design Commission. The primary reviews is typically most applications that come in before the commission. We conduct a community design review, and simply said, that's really our architectural review role, design, aesthetics, and all that. We do have some regulations that are outlined under in our ordinance under Chapter 425, and then for commercial properties, we have some outlined in Chapter 428. But one of the main things in the majority of our reviews are regarding residential development. And to assist us in the review process, along to assist developers, neighbors, and owners, is we've prepared some guidelines that are distributed and online, and we call that the Olivet Residential Redevelopment and Design Guidelines. And they, in essence, kind of provide 12 design principles that the commission looks at: roofs, massings, garage placement, tree preservation, stormwater, elevation, materials, and things of that nature. So I just want to know, so you'll see some reviews just going solely under a community design review. If a lot conforms with all the zoning district regulations, a majority of the time they're just here for a community design review, meaning an aesthetic review. That's different from the second component that we do. That's a site plan review. A site plan review is when there's something unique about the property, that now you're not only looking at the characteristics and the design of the lot, but also taking into consideration that there may be issues with the lot that require review both internally within the property and how it impacts its adjacent neighbors. So if a lot is too narrow, it'll go through a community design review and a site plan review, because we're not providing the typical setback that you would in in a regular scenario or not. Site plan review conditions are outlined under Chapter 400 and also Chapter 428 in there. But again, if you have a petition before you and there is a concern that of the placement of the house, but it complies with zoning, um, it may not be here for that site plan review. It's just there for community design and the aesthetics, and neighboring property or concerned resident may not have a standing to ask or make requests if the lot complies with the city standard zoning and such, where under a site plan, their concerns do warrant some consideration. And that consideration can be to traffic, landscaping, placement, materials, and things of that nature. Thirdly, there is what we call the special permit use, and those are used differently in different communities, either as special permits or conditional uses. And these are uses that are called out in the district, but don't necessarily um, they may not necessarily be compatible unless there's some additional regulations put in place. A good example is a fast food restaurant or a drive-through. While it's a traditional restaurant, it's traditional retail, but there could be some traffic impacts. There could be some noise impacts. There could be hour regulations. So the special permit process provides the commission the opportunity to evaluate this unique use and impose additional conditions above and beyond really what might be in code. Placing, placing limitations on the hours of operations is an example. When an item goes through special permit use, we use our comprehensive plan to help us guide us on the review and the process. Chapter 400, which references the site plan review process. Chapter 425 and Chapter 428, which are community design standards, and Chapter 422, which I'll get into next. Excuse me. Chapter 422 is our concept stormwater management plan. A lot of reviews that go before you will have a concept stormwater management plan. And basically, it's a conceptual or a preliminary plan that identifies how the development is going to mitigate or manage stormwater on the property. There are certain thresholds in which the plan is required and the commission will take action. And then there's certain there are guidelines that apply to all developments that may or may not go to the commission for their review. So just want to give you, as you see our agendas, typically you'll see the type of reviews, and they're either going to be community design and site plan, or in this case, we have one that's a special permit, which is community design and site plan and all that. So just wanted to give a broad overview, and if there's any questions on that. Okay.
Any questions from anyone? And I want to take a moment back before you get started. I forgot to properly recognize a new member of our board. Or up here is we want to welcome. See, I always said it like Petrie, Petrie Powell. So welcome, to the group, and we're very happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Right. All right. Anything else to cover before we move on?
Nope,
Carlos?
we're ready, sir.
Okay. Let's move on to item A.
Okay. Chairman, the first item on your agenda is 701 Villa Capri Court. They are here requesting a waiver from our city's stormwater buffer in there. This is part of Chapter 420, and the commission has authority to grant the waiver when a stream that's identified in our USGS map, which is our official map for identifying the streams, is now unnatural, meaning that it's been altered or modified in a way that it's no longer a natural stream bank. The commission has the authority to grant a waiver to the stream protection buffer. The stream protection buffer comes from Chapter 420, and the intent of that is that we, in cooperation with MSD, if you have a stream that's officially identified in a USGS map, we have consented to coordinate with MSD to provide a buffer and a setback. All of that being being the highest location in St. Louis County, we just have two general areas where we do have streams that are identified under the USGS maps, but they're identified as minor streams. So when you look at a USGS map, you'll see a solid blue line, which is like the River de Pere, and then you'll see a line that is a dash, a dot, dash, dot, dash, dot, and that means it's a minor stream that feeds into a larger area. The ones that are in Olivet are those types. And the intent of the MSD ordinance as a goal was to try to protect and preserve natural stream banks. In addition to that stream bank buffer, there's an additional setback that is added. The intent of the setback is to help filter impurities from going into the natural stream bank. in place. The property at 701 Villa Capri Court, while it does not abut a stream identified in the USGS map, the adjacent property does, and it's the old city of St. Louis water right of way, and in almost centered in that right of way is a concrete channel. So it used to be a natural stream. It's been modified, and now it's encased in concrete. It runs east to west along the property. Under the Chapter 420, the commission has authority to consider waiving the buffer component to protect the stream bank. And in this case, there is no stream bank. It's a concrete wall in there. But the setback, which would, which is intended to filter sediment from going into whether it's a stream or the artificial channel, would still be in place. The property owners at 701 Villa Capri Court are at the end of a cul-de-sac, and their side and rear property abut the MSD stream bank or channel that's located here on the south end of their property. They would like to place this item here, which is a code plunge in here, and that's what they're here before the commission. And to do that, they are estimating that we're kind of estimating that they're going to be pretty close to the stream bank or within 25 feet. There is an existing structure that they have that already is about 25 feet. So we felt it would be best to clear for the property to bring this to the commission for the consideration of a waiver. They would still provide the 25-foot setback from the concrete channel wall, but to waive the undisturbed natural stream bank buffer that's required under Chapter 420. You have the illustrations here. They have a really nice lot that has several improvements in here. They use a lot of pavers and all that, but they're putting a pergola, a pool, this plunge, and then this is an existing hot tub that they have in place. Again, the improvements that you see here are for your consideration, but the sole reason that this item is before the commission is to consider a waiver to the 25-foot stream buffer. And again, that's not the setback. They'll still apply a 25-foot setback from the high end of the wall in there. Be glad to answer any specific questions. We do have the petitioner online, and as soon as the commission's ready, I'll transfer her over. Oh, okay. We have a representative in place.
So Carlos, I'm curious, if we were to grant a waiver, I assume it applies only to this one particular item. So if they wanted to build something else, it doesn't give them carte blanche to do anything they want.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. And then from your concern, because it's a wall now instead of where it is, you didn't have large concerns around any violating any impurities. And it looks like we're really kind of grandfathering in almost this 24.
That's correct. And the lip of that wall is actually higher than the grade. And there's the possibility of the stormwater going in there. In addition to that, within that buffer, they have a pretty sizable, about a 10-foot wide planting bed area that you can see here along the corners or the perimeters of the property to provide quite a bit of filtration as it gets in towards the 25 feet.
And I see Chairman Jurgal has a question.
Yeah, Carlos, did you call that a solar plunge? Is that what it was?
No, it's a, excuse me. I want to make sure I got the name correct. A cold plunge. Thank you.
A cold plunge. Oh, okay. Okay. I've seen those before. Let me ask you a question. Where does the water from the yard drain into that that culvert?
Most of it runs north to south, so it goes south towards the channel area. This is the low spot on the property, and then of course that's why the creek is in place. But a lot of that subdivision runs from Villa,
Mm-hmm.
and then southward along the rear of Villa Capri, and I believe I think it's Candlelight, or is the next street over.
But I guess what I was asking, if there's a concrete lip, the water's not going to, run along the surface into the culvert. So there's got to be like a yard drain somewhere located in there that,
Yeah,
then.
I think there is an inlet kind of located off the property grounds in the MSD right away. Or in
Okay,
the channel area. And it might be this piece right here.
I don't see where you're pointing to.
Let me, bear with me 1 second.
Because if I remember correctly, in the past, we had something very similar to this. And we allowed a waiver, but we did want the area like within 20 feet of that inlet to be kind of protected. So it doesn't disturb anything and then run into the culvert itself, if that makes sense.
Yes, and that's correct. We had one on Bond Price Terrace. And
Mhm.
similar to here, they have a landscaped area that kind of goes along the rear of it's two sides of the property run along the rear. So along here, you can see that gray shaded area and then
Mhm.
down this way, this direction.
Yep.
So as long as we got like a 20-foot, from that, the drain, if you will, to that cold plunge, I think we're gonna be just fine. And it's kind of falls in light of how we, falls in line with the previous waiver that we've already, have given.
Petrie?
So I have two questions. It's my understanding that there's two issues. It's the location of the pump or cold
Plunge.
plunge, that's it,
Mhm.
cold hot tub. Is, as I understand it, 30 feet, 9 inches. And it's a 25-foot buffer, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the first thing we want to say. It's okay that you're within that 25-foot buffer.
No. So under the chapter 420, and it's a good question that you asked in there to provide that clarification. From the channel wall, there is a undisturbed natural buffer to protect the stream bank. And then at the end of that 25-foot, there is an additional setback to help with the filter out
Right.
sediment and all that going into the buffer. So the commission has authority to waive the buffer requirement. So then that 25-foot setback comes into the top of the channel in there. So that's why, even though the cold plunge is over 30 feet, if the buffer's in place, then it wouldn't be permitted because it'd be within the 50-foot total.
And then we're also being asked to eliminate the buffer itself and the undisturbed vegetation.
That's the first 25 feet,
The
yes.
first 25 feet, okay. I guess my concern is that just looking at the site plan here, I don't understand why that particular use or structure can't be made to fit our guidelines. I don't think is there anything in this property that says, oh, it's got to be in that one corner. It can't be further north. It can't be further east. Can't be further west. It has to be this far away from the pool and what have you. I guess I just don't understand why we would waive very specific requirements in this regard when it appears to be that there's room for it to move to comply.
And it's a very good point. I'll let the petitioner address their decision on the placement and location.
Okay.
But before doing so, I do want to express, as part of that chapter 420, when we adopted that ordinance in place, we recognize that, and we support the intent and purpose of protecting the natural stream bank and then also helping, provide, space for controlling sediment or pollutants going into the stream system. But we also we're cognizant that in Olivet, we don't have the natural streams that you see further out west. And there where you have the original stream bank and all that. We do have a little bit up on in the industrial park and all that. So we amended the template ordinance of MSD to take that into consideration. We wanted to support MSD in the process, but we also recognize of, let's say, of the number of stream banks we have, 90% are unnatural. And they would impose a burden on a lot of our properties along this MSD channel and also the industrial properties and Indian Metals on the north end of town. So we amended it to allow the commission the ability to waive the stream buffer protection or the stream buffer in there, but still require the setback, because the intent is to make sure that the pollutants don't have opportunity to be filtered out before they get into the area. In the process to get that consideration, what the council said was for it to go through the plan commission for their review and consent. While that doesn't bind you that you have to say yes and all that, but it was a recognition that providing a natural stream bank buffer to artificial streams was going to be an undue burden on a lot of our property owners.
And to clarify, the item in black near your highlight there, that's already there today, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, to call out, the one we're talking about giving a waiver for is above that, right there, yes. So I, in some ways, I guess, that didn't come before us when the first one was there?
That was installed and I don't have a permit for it. And it's noted in your conditions that if the commission does consider the waiver, we want verification that that distance measurement is mine in there, and I'm coming up a little, almost to 24.5 feet. But if that needs to be set back or moved or relocated, we would want them to do so just to be fully out of that 25-foot.
Well, okay. So it's not in ground then, I assume?
No.
Okay. Anything else from the commission before we bring up the petitioner?
And I want to make sure that, one of the questions that was requested by the commission was to identify why the location or the placement was considered at that place. Okay.
And
I'm also
remember
gonna
to
bring-
turn your microphone on and please state your name and address.
Chris Rhodes with TRC Outdoor. Jane Sharp is also on Zoom here.
And in fact, your address.
Our office address is 993 Gravoy Road in Fenton. I'm with TRC Outdoor. We're the company that designed this project and we'll install it. Excuse me. We also installed the pergola structure in their backyard a few years ago. So we did this design and layout. I think that Mrs. Powell, your question, I think if you see the site in person there, we're also, part of the scope is to install a small pool there and keep it all in one area rather than spreading it out across the whole backyard. So we try to keep it as condensed as possible. Actually, only just the edge of this project goes into that area. The rest of it is inside their build line in their backyard. So it's a little tighter back there than maybe it looks on the map. So we tried to keep it all with code compliance and as tight as possible.
And we have people online. I wasn't sure if anyone online from the project wanted to speak as well.
It's just, I'm Jane Sharp. I'm the designer and I work with Chris. So,
Yep. Do you have anything to add or just wanted?
no, I think Chris covered it pretty well.
So to clarify then, we're talking, I want to just make sure the one that's 42 feet is the part that you're saying is encroaching within the boundary, correct? But then in parallel to that, Carlos, you're calling out that even though this one is already existing and would have violated the cold plunge, but we're clarifying it's at least 25 feet is our ask.
Correct.
Okay. Because I think if that came before us today, that'd be a different conversation, but it is where we are.
Carlos asked us to verify with a licensed surveyor the distance from all those.
Okay.
The existing sauna sits on a concrete pad, so it can be moved. We might have to pour some additional concrete or do something, but it's movable.
Peter, did that answer your question? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'll check to see if there's any public comments. Anyone have anything to add or want to speak on this issue?
We would ask that speakers turn on their camera whenever they're allowed to speak.
Okay. Seeing none. Checking if I have a motion.
Ryan, I'll be happy to make a
Oh,
motion.
please, I didn't see you. Please go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I'll make a motion to approve the petition for site plan and concept stormwater management plan review to authorize a waiver of a 25-foot undisturbed natural vegetation barrier at 701 Villa Capri Court as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated August 1st, 2024, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Okay. And you did call out the waiver of the 25-foot. Yep. Okay. Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Motion made by Robert Jagal and seconded by Laura Ragsdale. Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Ragsdale,
Approved.
Commissioner Powell, Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Jurgel.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously 5-0. The next step in the process will of course be the building permitting in there. So. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on to item B, 344 Summerdale Lane.
Chairman, before you is a proposed pool that is for 34 Summerdale Lane. It is before you for what we call the site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review. The pool falls within the parameters that can be approved administratively in there. But the flat work for that is limited to 5% of the lot area. And anything over has to be approved or acted on by the commission. So the way our code is set up is that the commission has granted administrative authority up to a certain point. And a lot like this, it's up to 5% of flat surface work. Anything above and beyond that, the code is set up that it has to go to the commission for a review, both for site plan to see how it impacts adjacent properties, community design. Sometimes you may have a 3-dimensional structure, and then also concept stormwater management plan review to see how they're going to address stormwater. Now, anytime flat work or impervious space of an accessory structure, the total combined coverage of an accessory structure exceeds 1,200 square feet, they have to provide an engineered design stormwater detention in there. So this item is before you because the flat work here exceeds that is authorized administratively. The flat work also and the total improvements exceed 1,200 square feet, and therefore there is a stormwater detention pit that is proposed here in the back end of that property here. I will note that this item also went to the city's zoning board of adjustment for a review regarding the placement in there. Our code limits the positioning of a pool in the side yard setback area, and the way that this lot is set up, it is over 210 feet in length. Most lots in all of it are 100 feet, and since our side yard setbacks are based on a percentage, being that it was 210 feet wide at 12% of the side yard setback, it had over a 24-foot side yard. The way this house is set up, their side yard or the house was laid out so their side yard kind of served as their rear yard. But again, through our code, we only recognize the front yard along the street, the yard opposite of that front line as the rear, which is in this case this top side, and then the south and north being the side yard setback. As you can see, existing on the property grounds here on the right, there was an existing pool on the property. That pool is going to be raised and replaced with this pool that you see here. You have the numbers and calculations within your packets, and I can pull those up for you too as,
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
I'd be
sure.
curious, because you said we can't exceed 5%. I'm curious where we're at right now. I was looking for those. And if you can remind me, Carlos, too, I know we've been discussing this quite a bit. And we discussed when we looked at other communities, possibly raising, when we talk about replacing a house, we talk about whether we add trees or the
Mhm.
pools were a little different. And we were talking about changing our numbers. I think we did vote on that recently.
yes,
And we changed to give more grace to, if you're putting a pool in, it's 50%, right, allocation
Correct.
versus that. Okay. And
Correct.
that accounts for this.
Mhm.
Okay.
So you'll see here at your, on your right hand of your screen, the existing flat work and their calculations, and you'll note that the pool here is, calculated at 50%. But you'll see the deck at 1,355 square feet. They have a small patio, in the back area, along with a small, deck or stepway out, and then a shed. In total, their total accessory coverage is 1,925 square feet, or 8.7% of the lot area. So again, administratively, I can only go up to 5%, and that my staff can handle. Anything over 5% has to come before the commission, for that site plan review process, because there may be issues that need to be taken into consideration. Commission has a little bit more authority of imposing those in there. But in no case, can the commission allow any coverage to exceed 10% in terms of total accessory structures. So this is underneath the commission's threshold, but it's over that of staff's, to be
Well, and
considered.
if I'm correct, if it had been 8% but was under the 1,200, it wouldn't have required retention.
Correct. Well, they'd have to provide some type
detentions.
of what we call best management practice, meaning they'd have to do something, but it wouldn't have to be engineered.
Okay. And, because I remember when we were debating this at the time, there's two factors. One is we didn't want lots to be all concrete and all covered and get rid of
Correct.
all grass.
Mhm.
But the bigger issue was water runoff.
Correct.
Right. And so we build massive structures and we take away grass, we take away trees. But what gives me a little more comfort here is we did build an engineered system to retain the water, which is
Correct.
helpful and worries me less than that it's going over, if that makes sense.
Correct. And in this case too, remember, there is an existing pool, and you can see that right here, and it probably has more concrete coverage than the proposed pool. There is no engineered system for the existing pool.
Hmm.
So in this case, we are taking one step to improve the maintaining stormwater on the property grounds, in there. Now, as in any Olivet lot, it is a unique lot, and there's some downslope and tight areas, in there. We did have one resident that showed up at the zoning board of adjustment meeting concerned about the drainage of the pool, not necessarily the stormwater generated of the pool. So they might have been like some confusion in there, but there was discussions with him and the owner on how they would drain the pool, in there. And of course, now we're also providing a detention pit to hold some of that
Assume
stormwater.
this spread out.
Yes,
The pool's gonna be level, so we're not gonna drain into it.
I just wanted to bring that to
No, I
your attention.
appreciate it. Any other comments from the board or the council? Commission? All right,
We do have a representative
yeah.
here,
the petitioner would like to speak at all?
Brian.
Thank you. I'm Brian Tabor with Prestige Pools. Our office is at 10416 Watson Road in Sunset Hills. We've been working on this project for a while, and I hope you all see what we see in this project. And we are 155 square foot over on the concrete. Right now, we have an impact of 1.18 cubic feet per second of water flowing off of this property. When we put the pool in and we put in the water retention, we are at net zero. So we are actually going to reduce the amount of water that's flowing off of the yard than what's there now currently. So we hope you all approve it.
I'm curious how did you do a water study or did you?
Yes, absolutely. We had the engineer, the civil engineer, Clay Vance, do all the studying for us. Yes, sir. And the notes are in the paperwork that you have.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Anyone questions for her? No? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. A step for public comments. Anyone have any comments to speak to this? No? Yeah, please.
Sorry, I'm
No, that's okay.
questions,
Not a
but
problem.
I assume that the number 2 reason why they're here is the pavilion structure, but that did not come in time, so we're not considering that at this time?
Correct. I'll
Would
get
you like
Brian.
for me to address that or you okay? Sure. So the pavilion at this time has been scratched.
Okay.
The interesting part about that, if the pavilion's not put in place, they'll cut back on some of their coverage that might have gotten them below the threshold. Still required the stormwater. I mean, that
Yeah.
in there. So
Still good.
we just wanted to make sure everything
Okay.
was covered just in case.
Okay. No other comments? All right, do I hear a motion?
Brian, I'll make a motion.
Thank you, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve the petition for site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a 920 square foot in-ground pool and a 1,355 square foot pool deck at 344 Summerdale Lane, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated August 1st, 2024, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion has been made by Robert Jagal. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second been made by Sam Wallach. Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Ragsdale,
Approved.
Commissioner Powell,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
and Commissioner Dragell.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously, 5-0. And of course, the next step in the process is going through the permitting.
Carlos, may I ask a question? They're not dealing with the pergola now. Does that mean that they're not gonna come back and ask for the pergola? It's definitely out for good, or what?
My estimate is that it is probably out for good.
Okay, we are going to move on to item C, 9504 Old Bonham Road.
Chairman, before you, you have a proposed two-lot subdivision located on Old Bonham Road. The property's address is 9504 Old Bonham Road. The property it has an existing single-family home, and the property is bounded by Jacqueline Court on the east and Bowood Court on the west. And then it abuts residential property to the south, with Old Bonham, of course, being on the north in there. There's been discussion about subdividing this property for quite some time. It looks like it has sold, and there is a developer that's looking to subdivide the property into two. The existing and proposed property well exceeds the standards in the SR district. The minimum lot width for a property in the SR district is 100 feet. Minimum depth is 150 feet, and of course, the minimum lot area is 15,000 square feet. The two new lots would have approximately nearly 23,000 square feet each, one being a little smaller than that. They'd be about 112 feet wide and roughly 205 feet deep. In the process of a preliminary subdivision plat, you're here to consider if the way the subdivision, if it would have any adverse impact on the surroundings, if there should be any conditions imposed in that. But you are kind of tied to the zoning district and its minimums. This lot is subdividable. In there, we've worked with the petitioner to look at the various orientations of the property. We feel the orientation here going north to south is best. We also have the ability to require some conditions and requirements in review of a preliminary subdivision plat. For instance, in this case, we did request that they dedicate 5 feet of right-of-way on the north side of the property along Old Bottom, which they show on this plat. We also requested that they provide a larger front yard setback on the north along Old Bonham Road. The code permits 25 feet. They're proposing 35 feet. They'll maintain 25-foot front yards on Bowood and on Jacqueline. In there, we also requested that no driveways access onto Old Bonham Road. Both Bowood Court and Jacqueline Court are city-maintained streets, and they will access those properties from there. So before you, in addition to that, we asked that they replace the existing sidewalk along Old Bonham Road When the city did the Old Bonham Road improvements, we did place a brand new sidewalk in there. And as part of the grant that we received, we were trying to meet the federal ADA regulations along the road. On this property, we were not able to acquire sufficient right of way to provide a full 5-foot wide sidewalk. So there is a 4-foot wide sidewalk with a bump out that serves as a turnaround, which is compliant with the ADA standards in there. In this case, now that the property is selling, we're asking for additional right of way and the removal and replacement of the 4-foot sidewalk to a fully compliant 5-foot wide sidewalk. And the petitioner has agreed to do so in there. Regarding utilities, they're all existing on the ground, so there won't be any new extensions of any sanitary mains or water mains or gas mains onto the property. In there, there are some modifications that they have to do along the south end of the property grounds in here that they're working with MSD in there, but each of those will be full utility services are within reach for both of those lots in there. The other thing that we look at and ask is, can they fit houses on these properties? And you have a illustration that shows the potential for 2 houses to be placed on the property grounds. You can see on the slide here, the imposing the possible footprints onto that. This doesn't tie it to these houses. I mean, these houses may change or such, but they have shown that they can provide 2 reasonably sized homes on the property grounds in here. I also will note, because I got this from a call yesterday, there was a recognition that on the illustration that shows the houses, that the square footages that were shown on there were incorrect, and they are. And I appreciate that being brought to our attention. But these were just for illustrative purposes. They're not, once they come in and decide that they want to build the house, they're going to have to come back to the commission, provide individual site plans and all that correct. And we'll review those as we go through. So we appreciate that was brought to our attention. And we'll take that into consideration as we go, as they go further down the process in there. That provides a brief summary in terms of from the staff review. Be glad to answer any specific questions. I believe we have a representative here on the petition, and I do believe we also have a neighbor that has some concerns. One of the things we did request is a tree study on that site and a landscape plan, and those are conditioned that those be provided as part of their approval. And I think you have some information on those now.
So Carlos, if I'm correct, all we would be doing is suggesting a motion to forward to city council, correct?
No, this
Oh.
is the preliminary plat. So the next step would be that they'll come in with a final plat. The final plat is just going to show the boundaries. You won't see lots, or you won't see the houses or the trees or
Okay.
anything. And then it'll have a lot of legal language. And it becomes a document that gets recorded in the county. So that's the second step in this process. The first step is to do a preliminary plat review.
But we actually do make a motion on that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and
And then-
only the commission.
And only, okay, because it said here forwarding a recommendation to the city council is why.
Oh, I apologize if I did have that in there.
That's where I was confused.
We had anticipated that they were going to submit the final plat at the same time. And that is incorrect. So I think it was on the motion, the first sentence of the motion, that we didn't change how it was set, and we left it as
Okay.
what was probably
And then-
previously there.
One of the questions I also have is, would we have the authority, because that's a significant piece of land that is now gonna have 2 much larger houses and getting rid of the trees. So I understand the landscape. What about water? Do we have the ability to put conditions in there that, I know they will probably go through normal, assessments like that, but I just can't see in good faith, like, really taking away 80% of the greenery there on can we enforce that or request that there must be, engineered system or something like that? Or is that only conditional based off the square footage of the house?
It would be based off the square footage of the house. It is going to be required when they come in for each individual house that they have a detention system that takes into
Okay.
account the entire roof area of the property on each individual property, and that they be independent of each other. So
Okay.
one's going to design their own, the other one's going to design their own. But that is just going to be for the building footprint itself. It doesn't take into the consideration of the driveway, nor does it take into consideration any patio or so. It's just what is captured from the roof gutters in there.
But you're confident there will be a detection system at this point?
Oh, yeah, it has, it's
Okay.
required by code.
Okay, and then the
So-
last thing, I apologize, you said north to south, because I know one of the things we've always wanted to make sure is on Old Bonham, houses are, the front door is basically facing Old Bonham, is what you're saying in this.
Yes, we've made that we wanted, you know, the ability that these houses would have some, you know, for instance, and bear with me here for a second. This house would have, you know, a 3-car garage, but here's the front door area and they're facing Old Bonham. I'm not, you know, they're not tied to this house footprint. It's just for
An idea.
illustrative. Same thing, this house would have a side entry 3-car garage off of Jacqueline Court, but the front would be facing Old Bonham primarily in there. In these scenarios.
Could
and-
change, but yeah. And Petrie, you had a question?
Okay, so I just want to be clear because of the tree delineation here in the packet is even though there is no proposed house, there's no individual site plan for each one of those lots, the tree issue will come up again.
Yes,
Okay, so when I see like to be removed on these lettered trees here, I don't have to be concerned at this juncture that say tree Z, which is a very large tree, is planning to be removed but is not in poor condition.
correct.
Okay, so this is just for informational
Yep.
purposes and we're not saying this is the tree plan that you have to live by.
What the preliminary plat process provides you the opportunity, or the commission the opportunity, is to emphasize anything that you would want to be considered when the individual houses come into play. So it might be good to include in the motion an emphasis on a landscape plan that accommodates or takes into consideration some of the mature, healthy trees that are being removed.
And that would be consistent with what we're seeing in the design
That is
principles.
correct.
Okay, where they show, don't get rid of big,
Try-
large trees.
try your best, yeah.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding what exactly is being approved tonight.
Yeah. Rob?
Yeah, Carlos, do we have any existing water related issues on either of the 2 streets that are adjacent to this? Like the other neighbors? I know this sits on high up, but do we have any other water issues where it drains down to?
It's a good question. It's a hard one to answer because Old Bonham is the high point along, you know, south of Olive in there. And we do know that as you get towards the Ladue line, these properties do get lower and lower. I'm not aware or not has it been brought to my attention that we've had any flooding or major ponding in those areas, but that water is flowing southward in there. Now, the existing home, which is only one house on the property, but it does not have any detention system in place. The new homes will in there. But in terms of, you know, we have these properties that are midway between Old Bonham and Ladue that they're kind of like freeways. All that water just kind of runs through them and then culminates, of course, as you get towards the south end of the community in there. I don't see that there's any mechanism here to mitigate, you know, what starts at the very top. You know, as you start going further south, that's where the opportunities to slow down the velocity would be ideal. But that's well out of the bounds of this property. Not sure that addresses your question directly, but
It does, and I appreciate that. And I'm just a little concerned too about the house that's directly to the south of this property. And you know, sometimes with new houses, they tend to, have the house set up higher than the previous house, creating that mounding effect. And I just want to make sure that the developer is looking at that and paying attention to that so it doesn't impact the adjacent neighbors.
and this is one of the things we kind of struggled with. Now it's not as significant, but it's one of these things that always comes into play. We asked the petitioner to give us a greater setback along Old Bonham, therefore pushing the houses further south in there. but the way they're designed and the more extensive length is really, for the some part is going north to south. That also gives me a deeper rear yard. So the new houses that would be placed on here will have a greater rear yard setback than the existing home, and you can see that right here.
Mhm.
on
Yeah,
this.
that's good.
So the existing home wouldn't comply with the proposed rear yard setback under the scenario that this 2-lot subdivision. The 2 new homes will be further here, but of course we want to keep as much green space along the Old Bonham Road streetscape as possible. So we don't want to move them too far forward. By doing that, then we take them away from the slope area, because the existing home does have a walkout. Currently the 2 proposed homes would not, but we haven't gotten into that extent of a detail yet.
Understood.
Further up the ridge.
Well, we just need to be paying attention where we put the
Absolutely.
stormwater detention system and where the pop-ups are, as well.
All right.
Anyone else? No? Why don't we bring up the petitioner, Carlos?
All right. And do we have a representative of the petitioner in place? I think we have 2 neighbors. I don't have the petitioner online.
You mentioned
in
there
our-
were someone else who might want to speak to it.
All right. All right. Hold on 1 second.
And just a reminder for those of you online, try to turn on your camera, please, and make sure to state your name and address as you address.
So Chairman, I've promoted a gentleman here identified as Fred, but Fred, I kind of thought you were a concerned on the property, not the applicant, correct?
You're on mute, Fred.
Sorry about that. I live on Bowood Court, so I drive past this property every time I leave my house.
Do you mind?
So,
Okay. Do you mind stating your name and address, please?
yeah, Fred Brooks, 441 Bowood Court.
Okay.
And so I understand property rights and progress is progress. I'm personally very disappointed that one of the signature lots that you see as you drive east-west on Old Bonham would be carved up and put into a much less bucolic sort of condition. Because when I moved all of it years ago, that was one of the reasons. There are these nice, modest ranch houses on generous lots. This is an exceptionally large lot, but things change. I get it. I'm a little bit concerned though that the decision to use Bowood Court and Jacqueline Court effectively as alleys for the 2 new properties facilitates overbuilding, right? You're going to have 2 new lots that are roughly the same size as my lot, right? But by allowing the coincidence of the fact that it straddles these 2 side streets to have the exit to the house on the side, that means you can build a much bigger house, take away more of the green space, and just have an appearance that isn't really in keeping. It's incongruous, I think, compared to many of the other houses in the area that are in some ways limited by the fact that their driveways have to exit onto the main road that serves as their address, right? So I understand not wanting to clutter up Old Bonham with additional driveways and circle drives and so forth, but I do think it's disappointing that by having the driveways exit onto these 2 side streets, that then the builder can just increase the square footage of the house. That wouldn't have been possible if you had to design a driveway that exited on Old Bonham itself. So that's just my comment. Also, as Carlos mentioned, when I saw these plans, I looked at the civil engineering drawings and just immediately saw lots of errors. Now I know that the civil engineering drawings are just placeholders, but honestly, it's kind of sloppy work. So I would encourage this committee to highly scrutinize whatever the final results are for accuracy. Because, for example, if you look at Lot B, I mean, it has the driveway going across the street, right? I mean, that's just kind of an amateur mistake. I mean, I wouldn't submit something for a planning board, even as just a tentative thing with glaring errors like that. So That's my comment. And I also feel sorry for the people that live directly behind this proposed development because they're never going to see the northern sky. They're at a significant elevation disadvantage as it is. And if two new two-story houses are built above them, so to speak, they can give up looking at any stars that happen to be to the north.
Okay.
That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Do we have any other public comments?
Chairman, given the absence of the petitioner, at least for now, if we can defer action.
Yep.
I'm not sure they're going to come in later or not, but
Yeah, I think it's fair to do that, and I think just to address some of these questions as well, and whether it's now, since this is just preliminary, that works for me.
okay.
Okay, then we will defer action on that and move on to item D, 17 Heather Hill Lane.
All right. Okay. Petitioner, you have a petition to construct a new single-family home on the Heller Lane subdivision. The property address is number 17. You have copies of the building elevations and all that. The existing lot, zone SR, is a legal conforming lot, meaning that it meets all the minimum width requirements and therefore is not subject to a site plan review. But the commission does have community design review oversight. To provide guidance to the commission, we've adopted the Olivet Residential Redevelopment Guidelines in there, and you have staff analysis regarding the guidelines and how they're imposed onto the property and the improvements. So overall, the massing, the roof, the materials, the breaking of the elevation, and there have all been consistent with what the guidelines have identified. The way the property is set up, there's an existing, of course, the existing home here and a pool area here, and then the fence here, and then you have some several trees that are along the rear. Those will remain undisturbed and outside of the construction area of the property. But you do have two street trees here on the eastern side of the property. I believe that they've been noted by the subdivision to be maintained in there, but they will pose an issue because that is the only way to get to the construction of the site in there. So we will require the petitioner provide us some mitigation plan of how they'll protect those trees and distinguish that from the construction fencing that's going to go on the property grounds in there. The petition has been reviewed by the subdivision association, and they've made some modifications to address the subdivision association's concerns. Overall, everything else is compliant with the city's zoning regulations, and we find it compliant with the city's design guidelines. Be glad to answer any specific questions on this, and we do have the petitioner here.
I appreciate it, Carlos. I'm just more curious, I guess, if it sounds like it meets the code of the width, it sounds like it meets all of our design principle concerns. Some of the things we talked about is whether or not things need to come for site plan review, if I'm correct? Because we said staff, if felt comfortable, if it met everything, wouldn't always bring everything forward. I'm curious what warranted you to, I'm not challenging it, just kind of curious what warranted it to bring it forward.
It is required, regardless of my evaluation or our staff's evaluation on there. It is required, and same with the commission. It takes a consensus to consider that.
So it's other things that you have the ability to make authority on, but not site plan has to move forward. Okay, but you have no concerns otherwise on the design.
No, our role would be if there was issues to make sure that you were aware or they were brought to your attention.
Makes sense.
To
Okay.
make that decision.
Carlos, the staff summary, under community design review, it mentions potentially concerns about the left elevation and the elevation articulation, which jumps out to me a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more?
Sure,
about
let me
what
bring
your
that up for
concerns
you.
were
One
there?
second. Appreciate that. And Rob, I'm not sure, I'm assuming, Rob, you can see the elevations we have up?
Oh, yeah, I can see them.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so this is the left elevation that is referenced in the staff report. And if you look at it in terms of materials, it's over half brick with the siding. It has the breakings and the mass. This is one that we always bring to your attention. If you were to consider materials, windows, and the trim as means to provide elevation articulation in a two-dimensional space, that would be there. What we've heard from the commission in the past, so, is that they usually want to see more windows or voids in there. But you can do the exact same thing with changes in materials in there. That being said, it's our role to make sure that, we bring this to the commission's attention, and it would be to the commission to determine if there should be more articulation, or if the articulation shown here is sufficient. There's no right or wrong. It's our responsibility to make sure we make you aware of that.
I mean, I say this all the time. I don't really view myself as the aesthetics person on the commission, but it does strike me as sort of a big mass on that side. Now, maybe it's mitigated by the view from the neighbors or from the street in a way that it doesn't matter to anybody except for the homeowners, but I'd be interested what the rest of the commission thinks about it.
I tend to agree. It's a big, two kind of small windows there. It is broken up by the siding, but it is a big mess. Carlos, do you mind going to the aerial view again? I think that faces, no, so they would be able to see it, right? Yeah, so it's not like blocked by trees or anything. Okay.
What's the floor plans look like? And is there potentially, or maybe this is just a question for the petitioner, if there's a good opportunity for an additional window?
All right, Chairman, I'm going to go quickly over the site plan, and then
Yeah,
if you want to bring these.
please.
So on that side, on the left side, you see the dining area here, then the kitchen, which has the window in there, and then the pantry, and then living room. In there, on the upper level, you have a master bedroom along with a master bath, all aligned along that area.
Where's the window upstairs?
It's right here.
So no, oh, okay, no window facing that way in the master bedroom. Okay.
I can't see it, but I'll trust everybody there if it's difficult to pull it up on mine.
No, and that's why I want to make sure this works. So bear with me 1 second.
No worries.
This is the upstairs floor plan. You should be able to see that now.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is
Then I'm gonna
great.
go downstairs. And this is the first level. You can see the living room facing towards the street, the dining area facing to the rear of the property. And then that window is there where the sink compartment is.
Yeah, I think it'd be, oh, sorry. Between.
I was gonna say, looking at the floor plan, which I typically wouldn't really do, but it seems like they could use windows on this side. There's nothing in the floor plan that would suggest that they can't put more windows.
This is facing north. Is that correct?
East.
Correct. The
This is
front is
south-
facing it.
South?
elevation.
That one is
Oh,
south.
it's on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, there's no windows in the dining room or the living room. They're only in the front and the back of the house. So it seemed to me is that additional windows could easily be added,
Maybe-
without affecting the floor plan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and why don't we bring up the petitioner, see what they think? That works. Oh, sorry, can you turn on the mic, please, and then name and address? Thank you.
My name is Mark Manlin. I'm with the Manlin Company, 14 Spady Lane. A lot of times what you run into with the windows is just the placement within the living space. Looking at the floor plan, I agree. I think windows could be added. I don't see any reason why in the dining room and or in the living room that we couldn't add them.
Oh, I think that would help, yeah.
I think that would help tremendously.
Yeah, agreed.
Especially if some uniformity in like dining room, kitchen, living room, or something like that to build something.
Maybe how about a couple of windows on the side of the dining room?
At a minimum, I think that's a good start for sure, yeah.
Okay.
And I like the idea of the living room too, but
Yeah.
but that's me, not your house.
And
I-
now-
With
I
you,
will
Brian.
note, I think, when you look at the elevation on its own, it does bring in some character. But take into consideration, I mean, that the whole west wall of the dining room and a predominant portion of the north wall are already glass in there. While I agree, maybe a window may help, but at some point you get,
Too much.
yes, and that's more of a design issue for you than it is for me.
And one other,
ahead.
one other thing to be careful of is just lining up the windows with the adjacent neighbor too. That's sometimes, the adjacent neighbors don't like it if they're looking right into their house as well.
Fair. So it sounds like you're open to discussing that.
Absolutely, sure.
So Carlos, in that situation, what happens here in terms of that
Two
change?
things that the commission can consider either, deferring the petition, which I think would be unnecessary personally, in here. If the commission can entrust staff to work with the petitioner to add an additional window on each side of the existing window in there, we'd be glad to work with the petitioner, or the commission can also request to authorize it. This won't change the site improvements, which they need to get going. This won't change the footing and foundation for the most part. In there, that they can come back with a revised elevation at your next meeting too.
Yeah, I'm generally comfortable with the direction that staff knows what we're asking for. So if they come back and work with staff, then staff can bring it back if it's a concern, but I imagine that can be worked out.
Agreed.
So if
Laura.
this would be the south elevation. This is what faces north.
The garage side, correct?
The garage side, and then here's that dining room, and
Yeah. I do like that. I mean, I like that one.
Can you go back to the south elevation?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to see what was over that window, because on the north elevation, there appears to be some detail over the window. I just want to make sure that it's the same. That's all.
Thank you very much.
The
Appreciate you.
one thing I would ask for some guidance from the commission. I'm sorry, Mark, on here, and I don't want to put you on the spot either, but it's also to assist me in the process. When I look at this elevation, at least, in my personal and professional opinion, would be that, yes, it lacks something more on the street, towards the street side than it does here. Again, I got glazed windows on this end and glazed windows on the back end. But maybe another, window that's lined up on the upper level will help break that. So I would ask the commission to give me some clarity if they'd consider something here and something here. Because the change in materials and just the utilization of the brick makes it a crisp elevation. You add a window to it, it's still gonna be flat. It doesn't, but I think when you're at the siding level, it does help a little bit to break that up.
Yeah, it was broken.
No, that sounds reasonable to me,
Yeah.
Carlos, considering the other windows on
Could
the
you
other side.
clarify that?
Yeah.
some?
That we would look at something here, and I know Mr. Drogow can't see
I'm
that.
not looking.
I can see it. I can see it.
1 second, sorry.
That's the master bedroom, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we would look at something here and then something over here.
Okay, and so in the master bedroom,
And living
on the,
room.
if you look at it, there's a simulation of a bed there on the
Yeah,
bed wall.
Correct.
Okay, a single window there, and then
The
in
living
the
room.
dining area below,
Living room.
No,
I think.
living
living
room.
room. Okay, so towards the front of the
Especially if the
house.
dining room already has those 3 large windows right there. That might be
Yeah.
a lot of,
True.
and I think to your point, Carlos, I think there's some latitude given to staff to work based after you talk to the owners, kind of what works, and then staff can
Yeah.
figure that out.
I would think with the living room, there's absolutely no objection. The only thing I'd want to talk to him about is the bedroom,
It's fair.
nightstands, bed. I mean, I
Understand.
don't know what issues it would present, but
So we just need to, Carlos, we would just need to call that out in the motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, when,
Sorry, I don't want to be known as the tree girl, but one of the recommended conditions for approval is the tree protection plan for those front yard
Yes, sir.
trees. And in the first page of the report, it says that the petitioner will conduct a tree study ahead of the meeting and I assume address those issues.
Correct.
At this stage, do they have a tree plan
The
and?
tree study's been provided as part of the packet
Okay.
in there, they're identified. The trees that are towards the rear, again, are outside of the boundaries of the construction. So this, especially this larger tree here, is outside of the area that's going to be disturbed.
Okay.
The one thing we want to make sure is that it's healthy, because if it's not healthy, the worst thing we could do is 5 years later, we have a resident that has to remove a tree at a significant cost because they have to work around the existing improvements. So we're asking that, some type of verification. It's a good hardy tree. And then on the front, the subdivision does have a requirement. I think they've also planted some of the street trees themselves. These appear pretty young, but we want to make sure that they're protected in a way that they're distinguished from the construction fencing. It's going to be hard to try to keep debris and movement, especially as you get below trades and subtrades of the subtrades to somebody just, that's dumping, brick or so. So we want to make sure that we can work with the developer to come up with a mechanism that they stay out of there, that they're a little bit more sturdier in there. And it may be like some type of green fence as opposed to the orange fence.
That's
and all.
fine. That's what we typically do. And we'll even put a sign up that says tree preservation area or tree safety area, which I'm happy to do.
Does that address your concerns?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
The other thing I'll note, and this is also, this is a thing we try to balance with these street trees. In this case where we have an existing, an older infrastructure and development, all those utilities come from the street. And whether they can construct new lateral lines for water, sewer, and gas and be considerate of where those tree placements are. But they have to remove what's existing, and that's not considerate of where those tree placements are. So we could impact the root system in that process, and then that could either lead to a quick or even a prolonged deterioration of that tree, and it's always hard to balance. This is not ideal the way they're situated in there, but we've worked with Mr. Mallon in the past, and I'm sure we can cooperate to work on it in there.
Any other comments?
Carlos, is there a concept stormwater management plan?
Yes, sir. It would be in the packet of information, which if you bear with me, I'll pull the plan set up because you won't have that.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you can't see what I just brought up. I'm doing
No,
this-
I can.
You can?
No, I can see it. It's just,
Okay.
I needed zoomed in.
Okay. So here's the existing improvements on the property. And you can see that big 42-inch tree back here
Mhm.
in there. And then in terms of the proposed improvements, they'll be breaking up the detention area into two parts. They'll have a northern and a southern detention system to accommodate for the roof coverage on the property grounds. It's a pretty flat lot in there because again, they have a pool in that back area in there. So, and the front it seems to be pretty level for the most part in there, but hopefully that addresses. I do have the calculations if you want to see those, but the two.
No. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is the placement of the rear retainage basin, if that's going to be in the root structure of the existing trees.
Yeah, it's a little further out, a little bit more comfortable than if it was closer, but it keeps it outside of the setback area and where the property starts to slope down. There's a
Okay.
36-inch tree here, the 42-inch tree here, and then you have the detention pit. And then outside of that, there's not much that's identified on the southern side.
Looks like it.
Okay.
Reply.
And it's closer towards like where the electrical lines and connections are.
Okay. Good.
Sorry. Chairman, I think Mr. Mellon.
Did you have
I'm sorry.
another comment?
No, I just said it, the BMP in the back should be outside the drip line of the closest tree, which is the 42-inch tree.
Good, good, good. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Oh,
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome. Thank you.
Anything from the public? Anyone online have questions or comments?
Okay, currently, I have no participants online.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, please.
Motion to authorize the approval of the petition for community design and concept stormwater management review for a new single-family home at 17 Heather Hill Lane, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated August 1st, 2024, subject to any staff conditions noted therein and subject to the petitioner working with staff regarding the windows as discussed prior.
All right, motion's been made by Sam Wallach. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
I'm gonna give second by Laura Ragsdale. She beat you.
All right.
All right, Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Ragsdale,
Approved.
Commissioner Powell,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Jurgell,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously. The next step, of course, is going through the building permitting process.
All righty, we are moving along.
Chairman, I'm gonna
Yes, please.
just ask for a quick second because I didn't want to overload the memory on the machine. So I need to load the next two sets of plans. If you can bear with me just one
So
second.
we hold music. Anyone wants to play it? Dawn left. Dawn would have helped us out a bit. so. Yeah, I know. Carlos is just gunning for or aiming for a better machine. Wants an upgrade. Isn't the sales tax weekend coming up too? The tax-free weekend? Or because of back to school, so don't go to Brentwood Promenade.
All right, now I got one more.
So while Carlos brings this up, we're gonna be moving to item E, the Olivet Townhouses, 115 through 1161 Dealman Road. I think there might be a typo there. That's what I'm wondering, if we're missing a one or we're added a one. We'll ask Dawn when she's back.
All right. Yeah, you're missing a one.
We're missing a one. All right, 1-1.
Good, good catch.
We'll blame Jack.
Toss Jack right under the bus.
That's fair. I have no problem with that.
And because it's correct on the slide.
Yeah. Well noted. All right, Carlos, it's all you.
All right, Chairman. We are all familiar with the development across the street that's come before the commission back. In
Carlos? I hate to interrupt, but I'm still seeing the Heather Hill. There we go.
All right, one second. Yeah, but let me get rid of these. Are gonna are causing this is where all right. Two, three, four. All right. Bear with me one second, Mr. Joel.
No worries.
All right, you should be able to see those. See the plans now, sir?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Lewis,
Yo, please.
Okay, all right. So we have the townhouse development across the street, started back in 2021, got approved by the council in 2022, and they've been working on the site grading, and they're moving along now to getting ready for the footing and foundations and framings for the northernmost building. The original plans that came in under the site plan had a criteria that they had to provide a screen wall along the property boundaries that's required by code when it's adjacent to single-family residential in there. In the notes for the final plan, they put that they would provide the wall kind of along here on what would be the western edge of the property, and then on the northern edge along the attached homes here that are part of the Castlegate Villas subdivision. They were not required by code, but the note was placed in there. The petitioner has been in discussions with the adjacent neighbors of not having to put the screen wall in there, and I'll go over for some of the reasons, and they've been pretty supportive of the removal of the screen wall. One of the reasons is there is a retaining wall. Castlegate, they have to, by code, they have to do the indent trails. That's not, okay. So this is one of the units of the Castlegate. In there, they have an exposed basement. Most of them have a decking and then a second level in there. But as you go back, there is, as part of this development, at a minimum, a 5-foot retaining wall, and then there'll be a guardrail system, and then their porches will start roughly about 10 feet from that property line in there. Their proposed placement of the screen buffer wall was right along the property line. So it was roughly going to be about the same height, and they were just going to screen the buffer, the retaining wall in there. It's a design issue. It's not one I'm comfortable with, but it's not a requirement either. This is the retaining wall that's been put in place. You can see it right here in there. This is the distance between the back elevations to that retaining wall, so you can get a visual and you can see the landscape improvements that are really on the Castlegate Villa side. You know, it's their landscaping. And then this is a typical rear view of that back end and as it looks towards that landscape wall. Now, of course, it's summer, and of course we've had tons of rain, so it's very green and it's very shaded, but you know, they do have some coniferous type of trees here in there. But again, and they also have their own ornamental fence. So this screen wall was going to be placed here on the lower level, right adjacent to this ornamental fence. In essence, it really doesn't do what the spirit and intent of the code is for it. Given that they have the retaining wall, it's not really necessary or required by code. And the petitioner had asked if they can seek to try to remove that. And in discussions with him, he went ahead and approached representatives of Castlegate subdivision. You have an email that was submitted by one of the representatives in here. I'm not sure we have other members of the subdivision in attendance today also, but it's been verified that they did have a meeting with Mr. Cohen. They did discuss the retaining wall, and there was support for not having to place the retaining wall in there. The true spirit and intent, if a screen wall is required, is to put it on the top side of the retaining wall. It's where it would be ideal in there. But in this case, given the amount of distance and that this isn't on the north, that's going to shade a lot of their backyard in there. And I agree that, you know, not having the retaining wall is probably a better bet than putting the retaining wall up here and then kind of shading that. And even as the solstice goes further low during the winter, they'll have an elongated shade in there. There's just not enough depth in there to have the 5-foot wall and then another 5-foot screen wall. Again, as you go on the western side along the detached single family residences, you know, it is required by code. And again, that's running north to south as opposed to this one running east to west and being, you know, blocking the sun from the rear properties of the adjacent property owners. Anyway, so what is before you is a request to amend the approved site plan to remove the buffer screen on the north side of the development grounds. And there, be glad to answer any specific questions, or if there's any details the commission would like to see. We also have the petitioner here in attendance to answer any questions.
Reading through the email, I just want to make sure I'm clear. They're talking about remove the retaining wall would be unsightly and unnecessary. The retaining wall's there. We're talking about not doing the buffer wall.
That is correct.
Is it just maybe a
Mhm.
mistake in the email, you think?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because we weren't talking about removing the retaining. We need the retaining, but there's no need for the buffer. And instead of the buffer, what I'm understanding from this is there would be shrubbery and plants and trees and everything like that. And generally, we think the HOA is okay with that. Just
Right now, the shrubbery and plants are on the Castlegate Villas property. There's nothing on.
Well,
the
I,
petition.
no, agree, but I said Mr. Cohen has agreed to plant various shrubbery and or trees along the perimeter of his property.
Okay, and if he does, again, they're on the north side of that retaining wall, so we would want something that is, you know, that would do well in a shaded situation.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
all right.
Okay,
But
so
maintenance would
can
also
you
be.
explain the
Sorry.
difference between a retaining wall and a buffer wall?
Yes, absolutely. So the retaining wall is solely there because of elevation grades and maintaining in that. Under our chapter 428, which are design requirements for non-single family residential properties, we require a screen wall be put in place when you're abutting single family residences. The best example, as you head south here on Dillman, is behind Firestone. They have that wall that at the back of the property. The code says you can't do a picket fence, you can't do a wood fence or a privacy fence, you can't do a vinyl fence, but you can do a polymer type of stone looking fence or an actual stone wall that you would see like on as a highway barrier or on a highway, you know, in there.
Got it.
So the goal was aesthetics and durability. We've just had issues with wooden fences on commercial properties, you know, lasting the length of the use of the commercial property. So we went with what we call that screen wall.
Okay, so the elimination of the screen wall would be on top of or to the left of the retaining wall?
Yeah, right now their proposal is to put that wall like around here.
It would be right next to the iron,
Oh,
the fence
right,
that already
okay,
exists.
okay, so they don't want to do that any longer,
No,
but they are planning to put shrubbery or whatever, landscaping.
The thought is he would, and it would probably be on the other side of the retaining wall to the left in that picture, right, Carlos?
yes, right along
And
this.
the question, the argument would be that we would want it to be something that can deal with shade. And so, and Rob, you had a suggestion?
Oh, I just said an easy to maintain because
And
getting.
yeah, if you don't want to try to get a mower and deal with, like, we've run into that issues too, where
Oh,
we
yeah.
have setbacks and no one can get back there to deal with it. So,
Exactly.
so
Okay.
you're saying bamboo is what I heard you recommend, Rob?
No, no, I did not.
Come on, we can laugh a little bit about it.
Oh, yeah.
No, too soon?
Uh,
Okay. All right, honeysuckle, that's fine, you do you. Okay, any other comments on here before we bring the petitioner up? All right, Mr. Cohen.
My name is Doug Cohen. I am the owner and developer of this property, Douglas Dealman LLC, I think it's called.
Address, sorry, just for.
My address,
Yep.
1025 South McKnight Road. So in our, I think my team made an error in the original presentation because we thought it was a requirement to have a screening wall on this north side. That's the only reason we put it. And then last week, Carlos mentioned that it was not a requirement. It was something that we put in our design by accident, really. And then as we built the Versalock retaining wall, and we looked at what we were going to be presented with, it was a poor design. And there's, I think, I could kind of maybe simplify things. Thank you for increasing that. So between my Versalock retaining wall and the Castle Gate metal fence, I think there's 8 feet. So it would almost look like between my Versalock wall, a safety heavy aluminum fence because of the height there, and then a screening wall, and then the Castle Gate fence, it'll look like a fence warehouse. So it would be nothing I'd like to put my name on. And so we took the approach to talk to all of the Castle Gate owners, tenants or whatever, that are abutted to that. And to the man, woman, everyone is on the same page that would not be something they would want to look at. And then, and with the agreement to plant some, I think evergreens would be that way, that kind of grow wide to buffer that. And so within time, they would not see anything but greenery. And
Just stating the obvious, then your HOA, the HOA there, not yours anyway, you know, would be required to maintain, required to support,
my HOA.
would be required to support it, correct?
Yeah, and down the road, I will probably, don't tell Rademacher Crystal this, but I would probably engage them to run both jobs. They manage Castlegate, so it kind of is a natural fit for me to hire them down the road to maintain both projects.
Okay. Okay.
Chairman, there is one thing I do want to point out because I'm afraid that it's going to come back with the western wall. The western wall, that screen is required by code. The spirit and intent of the code requirement is that it would buffer the visual, it will provide a visual buffer to those adjacent properties. The north was a note that was placed on the approved set of plans, but it wasn't a requirement. And given that there's a note there, I wanted to go through this amendment process. But, you know, this is on the development team's designers put the screen wall on the lower part of that development, meaning there, you know, while it's not required by code, which is a good thing, in there, it's not meeting the spirit and intent of screening the development from view. It's not providing a visual buffer. That being said, I mean, that was solely, you know, a design decision of talking about having it here. You know, if a permit was coming in, it would have to be on the higher end of the wall.
Yeah.
In there. I mean, that's, you know, but being that I don't have to deal with that if the commission considers that, the waiver here, which again, is not required by code, that will be okay. But as we get to this west end, the intent is that that screen wall is on top of the retaining wall.
So, and I see the language in here calling that out, like, you know, I guess I'm hearing one option we would say is, no, we want the screen wall, but we want it up there, right?
Mhm.
I think it sounds like everyone, the other group is, and I'd be in favor of trees instead of a screen wall anyway,
Correct.
or evergreens, but what's the enforcement behind that? What's the opportunity if for some reason it's not done, it's not maintained? What is the teeth of this?
We will make sure that when they record their indentures, that there will be mechanisms to ensure that the HOA is properly maintaining both the conditions of the wall and that landscaping.
They would keep it
in
up,
there.
so if one of them died or two of them died, they would
Correct.
replant and things like, that's my only concern is that the wall is more sturdy, it's gonna be there, but if the evergreens died, then what do we do with it?
Yes.
So, okay. Mike, sorry.
Isn't there a law that if you have a dead tree on your yard, wherever you live, you have to remove it?
Yes, but I think that generally yes, but obviously if they ever, you know, is brown but not dead. I don't want to get into that. So that was my only concern.
Exactly.
So,
I
you
understand.
know,
Yeah.
I just
Let me
want to make
add-
sure we're covered. I think it sounds like the HOAs are aligned to this, but I just want to make sure. Okay.
I do appreciate Mr. Cohen's efforts of reaching out to
Yeah.
them. I mean, they kind of initiated that process before submitting the application.
Any other questions on the panel up here? And then public comments.
I'm Clark Hickman from 1221 Castlegate Villas Drive. I represent the Homeowners Association of Castlegate Villas, and we are totally supportive of removing that buffer screen. We brought it up at our annual meeting in May with the owners and was voted unanimously to request that that not be built because the feeling is it would feel hemmed in back there to look out the windows and see a wall.
Wall on wall.
Wall on wall. So we have talked to Mr. Cohen, who has assured us he's going to put appropriate shrubbery in that area between his retaining wall and our fence. And it will be up to his HOA to maintain that in perpetuity. So
Wonderful.
we are very comfortable with that.
No, thank you for
proposal.
coming forward. Appreciate it. Any other public comments or comments from the panel? Okay. Carlos, I do notice that the recommended conditions of the motion in here, I couldn't find the one that would allow that waiver. I thought it was more about putting the screen. Ah, there it is. Okay. All right. With that, do we have a motion?
I'll make a
I'll make a
motion.
motion.
Nope. I'm gonna give it to Sam. Sorry, Rob, you're just slow on that.
Alright.
Motion to approve the petition for minor site plan amendment to the Olivet City Center Townhome Development as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated August 1st, 2024, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
All right, motion made by Sam Wallach. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ah, there you go.
All
Second by
right.
Robert Jagal. All right, Carlos, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wallach,
Approved.
Commissioner Ragsdale,
Approved.
Commissioner Powell,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
and Commissioner Jugel.
Approved.
And the motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Wonderful. Okay, we are on to our last of the new business at 9310 Olive Boulevard.
All right. Chairman, we received a petition to request to operate a child daycare facility at the property address as 9310 Olive Boulevard. If you're familiar with the area, it's the former location of the St. Louis Dance Academy, or the Academy of Dance. In there, the Academy of Dance had been in there, I think she had indicated, since early 2000. In there prior, I'm not sure what the previous user was at the facility in there. The site's been vacant since the academy has relocated to the Olivet Center. In there, this site and facility, I think, is roughly around 7,000 square feet. It's a tough lot. The amount of frontage that it has on Olive, a single access point onto Olive, and then with the building orientation being east to west, where the road's on the north end, it doesn't have much visibility as you go down that corridor. In addition to that, when you look at traffic on Olive, this is a tough lot to get in and get out in there. And it could have attributed to one of the reasons that the academy relocated in there. So we kind of knew we were going to have a difficult site to work with. It wasn't probably going to be prudent for retail use given its orientation. And then anything that had a high occupancy was going to have difficulty with the Olive Boulevard and being where it's centered in there. In addition to that, this is one of those, I'm not sure of and I apologize if this is not the right term, but kind of like an investment property in there. It's not an owner occupied facility in there. There is an ownership group that owns it, but they lease it. And right now, St. Louis Academy of Dance is still leasing this property, and I think they're leasing it for another 3 years. They approached me with the concept of consideration of placing a child daycare facility, where we met with the petitioner in there and talked about that site. And I think, in a vacuum, it's a good building for that type of use. It would be consistent with some of our objectives in our comprehensive plan. We don't have a child daycare facility in Olivet anymore within our boundaries. There are some that are close in there. And it is a good site. It's a low intensity type of use, except, when the drop offs and pickups come out and are oriented. However, the concerns are, again, that limited access, the configuration of the parcel grounds in that. So we continued discussions with the petitioner, and we sat down with the fire marshal and the police department, because we were concerned that if there was going to be anything that impeded, reutilizing this property would be impacts onto Olive, so therefore it's public safety. And then how do fire operations, operate to serve this site in there, whether there was children or not. But now that there would be children, how does that impact our services in there? So we had a good discussion with the police chief, the fire chief, and the petitioner in there. And end result is, there's nothing immediate that can be done to improve the access on the property grounds, especially given limitations on the ownership in here. But police felt that traffic could be regulated on site, limiting some of the left turn hours on there, mitigating and some striping on how the parking would be on the parcel itself. From the fire department, it was in both cases, odds are they would address any issues except for like an ambulance on the adjacent properties as on these properties in there. So if there was a fire, they would not want to be parked that close to the building. So they would probably be at the adjacent property and then taking, and then providing services from those ends and all that. If they had to go into that drive lane, they could get the vehicles reasonably be in there. They could get the ambulance fully in there, but coming out would be the difficulty because they'd be going more than likely in reverse. An ambulance may be able to do a 3-point turn in there, but the pumper truck definitely would not in there. But I still have this building that's vacant on Olive Boulevard and need to find a viable use in there. Long story short, we've been working with the petitioner on how we can make this site work for the proposed use as a child daycare facility. And I think there are some opportunities there for consideration in there. Again, it would uphold us in terms of trying to further the goals and objectives of our 2024 comp plan update in there. It would get a good occupant into this site, hopefully a long-term occupant to utilize this site and building in there. And it's kind of appropriate given how its orientation is. I don't think I can get a really good like sales tax generator in there. It's just kind of difficult in there. We do recognize that in the future, there may be opportunities that sites on each side redevelop in there, and that maybe we can position the site to ensure that there's cross access easements or some mitigation between the two. But this area, given these little small lots and the way they've developed over time, it's a headache. I mean, it causes a lot of the conflict along Olive Boulevard, having all these little aprons and ramps in there, and that gets us back to that was a one big issue regarding this site. But I think overall, the potential of this use, the usability of the building may outweigh some of those risks in there, and therefore we're recommending to the commission to consider a recommendation to allow a child daycare facility on the property grounds. If they do, there are some improvements that they would propose. One, of course, in the interior of the building, they would be changing the floor plans, but that's all indoors and inside. But they would have to provide by code, an outdoor playground area, which they were going to do anyway. In here, our code does require that, any child daycare facility provide at least 400 square feet of outdoor play space, which would be provided at the rear of the building. So this excess parking here would be converted. It would be fenced in, and there would be both a hardscape playground and a softscape playground on the site in there. They would have a protection fence enclosure in there. There's an existing wooden fence, privacy fence that runs along the south and east ends of the property against the adjacent neighborhood, residential neighborhoods. And they would also post restrictions or limitations on the turning movements at specific times to avoid or minimize the amount of conflicts on there. But if you're still going westbound on Olive, as if you were heading to Creve Coeur, you would still be allowed to do a left and go into the site. Okay. But they would encourage their patrons that if you're coming out of the site, that you go eastbound and do a right only. Who would enforce that? They would enforce that in there. And we think we can craft some language into any conditions that if it doesn't work, they're going to have to come up with something different in there. That being said, I think that kind of goes over and there a special permit requires a community design review, a site plan review, and everything usually has concept stormwater management plan, but they're not going to increase any additional surface area. So there's no proposed improvements to how stormwater is on that site. We are not aware of any issues or problems that any neighbors have noted on the site grounds. We did do all the notifications as required in there, and then they would be converting some of that the current hard surface area into a softer, or they'll still have some hard space, but then they'll have some softer rubber type space that will help mitigate some of the stormwater that's generated on there. We would like to work with the petitioner. Again, this is going to be a difficult site to get reused. I mean, we could wait a little longer, but I don't think we would get the same type of opportunity and investment that this petitioner is willing to put within the building in there. But in the end of the day, too, it's not her building or her property. So we are asking, as she goes through this investment, to phase in some additional improvements on the site in there to give them some flexibility to get their feet on the ground and then, help us bring this site and building into compliance with some of our goal aspirations. And there, some of those would be like at the time of occupancy, to convert all the wall pack lights that are on the building to lights that are cut off and face down, and all that. They'll be complying with chapter 428. Within 3 years, to provide some type of schedule and opportunity to incorporate or record a cross-access easement on the property grounds in there. I'm not sure where the best location would work yet, and this will give us that opportunity in the future, and also again give the operator time to get their feet on the ground, and then time for the building owner to kind of put forward some type of proposal in there to be maintained, and then in that same time frame to slowly start replacing the fence, the wooden fence, the wooden privacy fence, into a more consistent fence, the screen wall that we talked about in chapter 428 just a second ago, and then do some improvements up along the sidewalk on Olive in there to bring us closer to some of our landscape standards in there. Be glad to answer any specific questions regarding the petition. If not, we do have the operator here to Ms. Blair to talk about the petition, and that's all I have.
No, thank you, Carlos. I personally, while I agree it's not, commercialized in that, but I'm actually think it's really exciting, the idea of a, daycare facility, as we don't have it, and thinking through some of the other unique challenges we've had over the last couple of years, this would create an interesting map in terms of what could or couldn't be on Olive Boulevard now. I'm thinking about that, probably eliminates all of those conversations, so if you'd write down. I have a question on one of your conditions, and you said record a cross-access easement, but that takes two, if I'm correct, right? You said with east or west, but they could be all in favor of it, but what if the people to the east and west aren't? How does that work?
They don't grant it.
So, well,
If they don't, if a neighboring property doesn't agree to it,
Well, there's two things. One, with or without the consent of the neighboring property owner, the cross-access easement can be recorded
Okay.
in there. And then if the neighbor does redevelop in there, then we would
become
be
part
able
of
to
that.
require
Okay,
their
so
use.
you're basically up to the neighbor line, but like I am granted.
Correct. And you would not see, for more than likely, you would not actually see like physical pavement that's.
No.
But
agree.
there would be a legal recorded instrument that would provide that in the future.
I think I would expand that condition to say cross-access easement to the adjacent property, but if I'm looking at this aerial correctly, it looks like they could actually go all the way to Dolores for cross-access. And then it would give you 3 possible exit points onto Olive, not just one.
I don't know. I don't know how the folks at Dolores would feel about
They-
that.
We had
but-
some challenges on
But,
access.
but I think that again, is consistent with the Olivet conceptual.
I agree. I'd rather have it there than all of.
And it is sound planning practice, and it would be something we would push. And I understand their concern. But again, the status quo on that corridor with all those conflict points is not ideal in there. We'll deal with that when we get there. Good luck.
Well, and I think also,
but
this compared to
that's the
what,
intent.
compared to what the residents were there before, I imagine while there will be an influx of traffic, probably in the morning drop off, in the afternoon pickup or whatever, the dance probably had classes every hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. So you're having a lot more influx of traffic. This will require people right at these peak times, probably picking up after work to turn right, but that becomes part of your routine. And I think we have to just work to do it, but there were probably classes at this time and people were trying to make a left side of there. So it actually feels like it's going to reduce, not correct, but it's a good call out to try to reduce it.
So the other issue is the left turn there will be, or there is already a left turn restriction.
They would put a sign on the property grounds that would kind of say right turn only between these hours.
Does all the properties along Olive have that same restriction?
No.
Like the one, like Dolores doesn't have it, correct? But
No.
as an example.
No. And again, there's no mechanism to impose that
We're
that
requesting,
criteria.
we're requesting.
isn't?
So it's it's a guideline, not a policy or law. Yeah.
Given that they're asking for, this is a special permit, I have to consider the traffic impacts, that this could have on the surrounding. Even though the previous user may have been more intense or not, the way the code was set is that it still allowed them to provide that type of services, where a child daycare facility is a special permit, and therefore puts us in a position where we can try to mitigate some of those issues that we know are there, and they'll still be there. So even if they were to get a office user and have, a call center with a number of cubicles, they can just go in there and not have to do any, they wouldn't be subject to any conditions that I can impose.
Okay, so we're doing it because we have the ability, but again, it's in the guidance of trying to minimize traffic, trying to minimize
Yeah,
impact.
recognizing
the
we have those
planning
issues.
principles, but I understand what you're saying in terms of the easement. Let's go big. We'll fight that battle when the time comes,
The other question, sorry, I just had a senior moment. Don't remember what it was.
I have a question, if I can jump in.
Yeah, well, okay,
well,
well, he thinks
thinking-
about it. All right, go ahead, Rob.
Exactly. So Carlos, how many kids are going to be, I know they were talking about staggering the arrival times depending on the class, but of course some might have more than one person in a class, but what's the anticipated way of dropping the kids off? Where people pull into the parking spots, park, and then walk in? Or is it going to be some sort of drop off, where they stay in the car?
Correct. Good question. And I can answer portions of that, but I think the petitioner can better address that question. And
They're in the
on there.
audience,
So if we
Rob,
can
so-
hold a second, unless there was something else.
No, that's it. That's good.
My memory, thank you. By eliminating all those parking spaces for the outdoor play area, does the number of parking spaces comply with that particular use?
Yes, because we're now going, the requirement, instead of going by square footage or by occupant load, it's by the number of instructors.
That makes sense. The kids aren't parking
Good,
across there.
thank you.
So. Why don't we bring up I'm sorry, did Lori?
Sorry, I have one other. I know when we talked before, there was a mention about the right turn only and that green space at the facing Olive. Would it be possible to put like a half semicircle for a turnaround for like emergency type thing or drop off or something? I mean, I don't know, like, not that I want to get rid of green space, but I'm just thinking it would help with if they needed to have, drop off or might make traffic flow a little easier.
We did talk with the police chief and the fire chief about that. It's a good question and a good point, because I looked at that space also, but the consensus was for number one, for the customers, that would not be ideal in there for providing their type of turnaround. So it became a question regarding emergency services and then to this facility. And the fire marshal did not think it was necessary. I don't want to say that he said that verbatim, but the way they would address a situation at this site would probably be off of the adjacent properties. If it was a ambulance type of pickup or something, then they would go in there, and then they kind of said, well, then they'll just go out with the light in there, but they wouldn't need that as a means to provide the services in there. I do see, again, as we talk about some type of cross access easement, that ideally it is probably going to be here in this area, whether you're going to go east or west, that we would lose some of this green space. But that's where I think doing some improvements over here will kind of shade that in there. It's hard to say if that will one day become a drive lane or not. Or if we mitigate it, that it becomes more of a pavement type of drive lane between the two properties to help out on some of the circulation or traffic.
Okay, now we're ready. I apologize. Yeah, please.
It's on. Hello, Latoya Blair, 4344 Cypress Road is where I'm currently located.
Maybe tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, so I currently own a preschool located in St. Anne. It is called Little STEMs in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. This one is going to be Dream STEAM Academy. So we're currently licensed, based on the space that we have for 20 children, in the St. Anne area. So this one will be licensed for 80. It's a lot, but we have plans put in place where that's not going to be our max capacity. I don't necessarily believe in packing kids into a room, things like that. So a little bit about myself. I've been in education since 2008. So for a while. And so just kind of following my passion with early childhood education and getting them ready to enter into kindergarten, with the skills that they need to be successful in all of the areas, especially in the areas of STEM. So I've been stalking this building for a few years, and I drove past here every week, I kid you not, and just looking up on this corridor and found this building to be available. And so I just kind of jumped on it because I knew that I needed to expand. I have a wait list. I have, people that are really excited about the care that we're providing currently to students. And I wanted to be able to expand that access to more students, and in a bigger, better facility. And so that's kind of where this vision kind of expanded in that way. So that's a little bit about myself, Dream STEAM and Little STEMs. And I'm just excited for the opportunity to stand here and actually ask for this approval because it was a dream. And then here we are. And so to answer the question online, it was about staggering drop off and pick up. Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
So there is a place on the application. I made added it to a presentation. And it was more on the application for enrolling your student. It talks about like what time would you be dropping off your student and what time would you be picking them up. They're not it's picking the student up. And so with that, we would just kind of lay it all out and put them in categories essentially. So originally I'm like, okay, infants can get dropped off between this time and this time, and twos can get dropped off between whatever and whatever. But it's just more about paying attention to the application and paying attention to the times that the parents need care. So on the screen here is just more, I just took a screenshot of that part. So it just talks about that. So that's where me and my staff would just sit down and kind of put students in pods of drop off and pickup times to try to stagger that for parents. We do have admission protocol where we sit and we go over the parent handbook, we go over the expectations, we go over all of those things with the parent in a 15 to 20-minute meeting, where they're able to ask any questions. So this would definitely be a part of that. So that way they're able to be given their drop off time and pickup time for that, as well as enforcing or making it a point that we would be enforcing the right turn only between certain times of the day.
Do you have anticipated hours?
Yeah, so we will be operating from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
I think it was Rob that brought this up earlier, but you're anticipating parents are gonna park and walk.
Yes, they have to park, they have to walk in and sign them in and physically, not hand them off, but physically make sure that they get to the right location.
And same for pickup. And
Yep,
collection.
same for pickup.
In your general experience, are the vast majority of kids being dropped off early in the morning and being picked up at 5:30 or when people get off of work? Or is it- okay.
Yeah. So our main times right now, based on what parents need, we open at 7 at our current location and we get kids from 7:30 to almost 9. And then pickup starts between 3:30 and then the majority of people come at 5:30. That's the latest you can pick them up.
But I imagine the number of parking spots obviously is more based off your instructors, but as people come in, you think it's usually staggered enough that between 6 when you're opening till 9, people might be dropping off, so you don't have any concerns on an overflux. Like I don't see why everyone would show up at exactly 30.
Right.
It's a different work schedule.
Yeah, I don't foresee that. Again, I'm operating like on a smaller scale right now, but just trying to do my best to mitigate that on the front end is the goal here. But just trying to make sure that we're looking at our applications and making sure that the parents know this is the time. Now, maybe some variation in that, of course, you got to be to work early, stay late, et cetera. But the main core, you know, if we're licensed or if we are housing 55 students, at least 40 of them are complying with what it is that we're asking them to do with no variation. If that makes sense.
One of the things that I wanted to note on there, because we had it in our discussion with the two chiefs, was in terms how a special permit works in there. I mean, we recognize that this has a potential, or could be, it's a risk that we're cognizant of, and we're trying to mitigate it as best we can in there, and kind of phased in that, you know, they would put a sign, that they would put some striping. You know, the next level would be, and we talked about this, that they would have to physically have a person out there directing if that's not if it's not working, to the extreme, meaning that if we're getting congestion or backup on Olive because of the exit and entry, through a special permit, the city reserves the right to revoke that permit in there. I don't think we would ever get to that intent, but I mean, there are mechanisms here to try to assist and mitigate those issues throughout that process. In there, we've been working hard to trying to figure out, and you know, how to minimize that risk as best as possible. Ms. Barrett's been really helpful and patient, you know, as we've kind of talked about all these what ifs, because you know, I think they're valid concerns, but this is a difficult property.
And I agree, you know, and the concerns sound like been very receptive. I'm curious, with the prior occupant, you know, did we have a significant amount of, you know, collisions, crashes, issues in that specific intersection area?
That's a good question. I didn't request or ask for any like traffic.
I'm just kind of curious. I mean,
traffic data.
that to me would speak to kind of where it's a problem, and maybe this helps address it.
Not enough to make us aware. And then Don did do some analysis for the police department on other items on Olive. She may.
I would say just anecdotally, that since they've moved, they've had a lot less issues with accessing and, you know, basically moving their students on and off of their parking lot.
But if you recall, not to put you on the spot because it may be, but you did do an analysis of crash incidents along the Olive corridor for the police department. And if you recall where some of that cluster was on the GIS thing, as part of the comp plan. So.
Well, the crash clustering, I know that the mapping, it was done through, I don't recall. I'm
Inconclusive.
sorry.
maybe.
Yeah.
No,
It's
that's
still-
okay.
It's okay.
And that's okay. And it sounds like you're comfortable with what they're proposing in terms of the right turn. So you have no concerns, you're willing to work, and it sounds like you have been working. Okay,
Yes.
let's make sure. Laura.
Carlos, do you know how many parking spots are there? And I know it's based off of employees, but I just know from running before and after care programs when I was in college, like parents do drop off at all different kinds of times, and wasn't really an issue. It's more of because you don't have all of your employees there the full time.
It would have 21 stalls on the site.
Okay, so
And I think a
probably-
staff of 6.
Yeah, 6 with where we are with enrollment, where we would be with enrollment.
But all 6 employees wouldn't be there from open to close.
So
day.
there will be 6 there at all times.
Okay.
So some
Some staggered.
variation, yeah.
Okay.
Carlos, I have a question. This is a daycare center, and how would that impact our current dispensary regulations and what we implemented and put in place, and the rules with regard to dispensaries, with this being a daycare center?
Good question in there, because a child care facility is called out under our cannabis regulations and placement. And the council has adopted the standard 1,000 feet, and how it's measured is unique. It's not like from the property, the edges of the property or so in there. But given the placement or location under the current ordinance, you could not have operated dispensary within 1,000 feet. I'm just going to use the property boundaries on here for right now. but within a 1,000 feet. So we didn't do an analysis of how far that would go. I could take a look at the county map sites in just a second in there. But the other thing is that the council also determines what that distance is. The council did not do any modifications or changes beyond that is the maximum that the state will allow you to go, or any municipality to go. The council has the authority to reduce that distance if they wanted to do so through a simple amendment in there.
But I think it's safe to say that hypothetically, if one on Dolores Avenue were to try to buy, that would not be okay.
So,
And that's what I'd hinted at, yeah, but I'm curious, like the CBD, the one on,
that is not a licensed facility. That is,
it's different.
not,
yeah.
probably doesn't sound right,
Alright,
but correct.
I believe,
So-
I don't know these. I believe you.
Mr. Jurgel, I'm gonna switch in there, so I'm not sure how that's gonna affect you here. But I'm gonna go to the county map. I'm just gonna go to the Allen. So that's about 500. And that's about 1,000.
But then
So
we're,
you're really up to about the mobile station if you're going west.
but then we're running into a old bottom school at that point, so that's what I was kind of implying is we're boxing our, I'm saying at that point, your old bottom school has been 1,000 feet maybe of where Carlos is now, so. I'm not disagreeing, that's kind of what I was calling at the beginning, this does kind of actually put another marker on Olive Boulevard, not that I have a problem with that, but it does do that, so.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank
I guess we should ask if there's any community, or, questions from the public, but I think everyone's a panelist and no attendees, so is that correct, Carlos?
Correct.
All
Well,
right,
and Chairman, I'm sorry, Ms. Blair, but if I can ask one more question for the commissioner on the purpose, if you have a second, yeah. And again, because it's a special permit, so it's kind of a personal question in there, but can you kind of talk about the lease arrangement on this?
Yeah, so I am, and I've been working with the current whatever, the dance, yes, there you go. The lessees about extending or finishing they have a 3-year, 3-month lease left on this building, and speaking with the owner about extending that once that's completed.
And then just so the commission is aware, there's extensive interior improvements to go from the dance facility to now
Yeah, and that's-
getting to in there, and not getting into the numbers. You have copies of the site plans, and then they have to make it ADA accessible, and because they have users that require assistance in emergency type of situations, they have to do some modifications to the windows, or convert many windows to doors, and address exit issues and all
Even
that.
like plumbing, like toilets have to be lower for the,
Yeah,
just
so-
those things like that.
Yeah.
So we're cognizant of the investment that Ms. Blair, would be doing upfront to get to operating. And there's where, if this is successful, that some of these conditions kind of get phased in over time. That gives her more time also as she goes into lease negotiations, that these are things that the city's going to be looking for.
Well, and it is risk isn't the right term, but you're taking a risk in the sense that
Yeah.
it's 3 years and you're making investments and you want to make sure that you're gonna be able to then
Yeah.
extend the lease after that, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, you're going in open eyes on it, so of course, so.
Yeah.
I'm personally excited about the idea of using a space that's very difficult, because to your point, there's not a standard thing. And I'm excited about the idea of a daycare. It gives people opportunity in the community or other places, because it is really difficult to find childcare.
Mhm.
So
Thank you.
it's huge.
Thank
Okay. Other questions? If not, we hear a motion.
I'll make a motion. It's not the right one on the screen.
Yeah. Up on the screen, on the monitor.
No,
Is anybody gonna,
I give it to her. She got
I
it.
got it.
is anybody gonna second it?
Oh,
Yes, we did.
that's just the
Oh.
title.
Oh,
Sorry,
the
but
title's wrong.
I didn't change the the top of the slide, but here's the
Okay,
correct motion.
okay.
No.
that's
Sorry
fine.
about that. Thanks for
Okay.
bringing it to our attention.
I think
Um,
Dawn's right, though. Somebody needs to second the motion, right?
No,
Or we-
she hasn't made the motion yet. So then oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Let's not make a motion.
No, she makes the
Somebody
motion.
seconds it.
She makes a motion. Oh, I see.
Someone has to second it before she can read the motion.
No.
No, she reads it
Her-
and seconded.
she needs to read the
Never mind.
motion.
Yep.
Sorry.
That is a motion, is what she
Yeah.
will be reading.
Okay. So, the motion to forward a recommendation to the city council to consider approval for an ordinance to authorize a special permit use for child daycare services at the property addressed at 9310 Olive Boulevard is presented to the commission through the site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review and subject to the conditions noted in the staff report dated August 1st, 2024.
Motion's been made by Laura Ragsdale. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by, I'm gonna give it to Robert J. Gallo. So, all right, Carlos, please call the roll.
Commissioner Waller?
Approved.
Commissioner Ragsdale?
Approved.
Commissioner Powell?
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis?
Approved.
Commissioner Jurgell?
Approved.
So the commission has made a recommendation. It does not approve the special permit. The recommendation is for the council to consider approval. So this item next will go to the city council in the form of an ordinance, and then the council typically will have a first reading when it's presented, and then a public hearing on another date or the next scheduled date in there, and then consider it whether they would adopt it or not. In there tentatively, I think we would be looking at I think it's the August 13th. Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, we're done with new business. So
Hmm.
we'll move on to other business, the 2024 comprehensive plan update and code revisions.
And Chairman, I'll request we can defer discussion on that.
Will not fight you on that.
Okay.
So, all right. Next on here was meeting minutes. I see we have some in the package. Is anyone willing to acknowledge receipt of meeting minutes?
I'll acknowledge receipt of the June 6th and June 20th meeting minutes.
So acknowledged by Laura Ragsdale. All right, and then reports. Carlos, please.
Okay, just a quick couple of things. I think Don has the schedule up there. Our next meeting will be on August 15th. In there, and right now we have one petition for a single family home for its review, and then we're conducting that review right now. And then our next meeting is September 5th. We try to keep the first meeting of the month a little bit open and to kind of have a work session, and the goal has been now that we've adopted the 2024 comprehensive plan, is to start talking about all those goals and objectives. On our side, on the planning side, our emphasis has been to update our building codes. We hope to have those to council within the next couple of months. We're looking at moving from the 2015 to the 2018 building codes. The energy efficiency difference is minimal, and they start getting minimal because the biggest jump took place between the 2009 to 2012 code change. So now they're progressing slowly. We'd like to the current set of codes that is out there is the 2024 codes, but county is behind on their code adoption. They're still at 2015. There is a study group that they formed, and they're looking to jump up to the 2024 codes, but being that it's going to be county driven, that could be a while in there.
Bless you.
Bless you, Don. Outside of that, a couple of development updates. Lot work continues at the Olive Crossing. In there, lot 3 is the lot that's closest to the interchange. That's where the Paris Baguette would be, along with the Smoothie King. They're in discussions with a restaurant tenant. I think a decision has been made, but I haven't heard anything officially in there, and they're kind of just getting the dirt prepped and set up for the footings and foundations on that site. Next door is the Aldi, and they are moving fast. In there again, we expect them late winter, early spring for an opening in there, but they're moving at a good pace. The crossing apartment complex, I think, has hit the 80% threshold in occupancy, which has gone really well for the site. They've been excited about their occupancy load. As far as the remaining components of the development, there are 2 additional lots there. There will be an office building structure and then a hotel. The office market's just, blah. There's nothing to say. But what puts us in a unique position is that, I mean, all the approvals are done and they'd be like shovel ready if someone's looking for, a coherent space in there, but it is a tough market in there. There are discussions, they didn't want to start the hotel to have hotel guests drive through the office while it was under construction in there, if it, on the same road and, have all that mix in traffic. So we've been in discussions with them in terms of how to utilize one of the secondary roads and maybe split up that traffic. And they're talking about maybe getting the hotel, moving up the construction on the hotel somewhat sooner than what they had planned for. But there is a condition on their developers agreement. I think they have to have substantial completion by sometime next year, and is becoming a tight deadline, something they'll have to work through. And there, across the street and behind the Chevys is the Irvington Place apartment complex. Their construction trailer should be dropped off within the next week or two, and we anticipate full construction starting by the end of August. You'll start seeing the roads being removed and all that. So that one is moving along and setting in place. As you continue down the corridor, the Great Heart Brewery, they'll be going to the council next week, or excuse me, at the first council meeting, actually 2 weeks from now, to get their liquor license. I think the equipment has been delivered. It still needs to be installed in there. They would want to get a partial occupancy so they can start the beer processing, and that takes about 2 months before they open the restaurant. So we're kind of looking at the earliest that they would start brewing would probably be sometime in September, October. So they're looking at a November, December date at the earliest in there. But it is progressing. We did have a discussion with them regarding the exhaust fan. There was some concerns expressed by the fire marshal and them, of course, about the length of the exhaust fan in there. I did coordinate with the owners, the Valentines, the architect, the contractor, and Mr. Spiegelglass. He had some concerns about the placement of the exhaust fan, and we came up with an alternative solution in there that they're looking towards too, and putting in place and mitigating the concerns and issues that would have had. What would have happened is that when the exhaust fan went out from the back of the building, there was they submitted the design of how they were going to resolve this, about a 20 foot length of an enclosed vent, or I'm not sure what the term would be, a pipe
Yeah.
running all the way parallel with the building, and then releasing the exhaust vent further down in there. And there was concerns about how much grease could get trapped within that length, the drippings that would be along the sidewalk in there, and such. I will go get into the full details. So we went out there to take a look at what is visible for where it exits the building, and what can be done to mitigate the grease trappings and all that. So they'll have a drip pan underneath the device and the exhaust fan in there, and then they'll put like a different finish in the back wall that will be easier to clean off, so it won't stain the brick or in this case it's kind of like a stucco ephes finish back there. And again, I chose Commissioner Spiegelglass, given his experience as a contractor in there, to see if that would be adequate to address those concerns in there. He couldn't make today's meeting, but we can talk about it a little bit more on August 15th to get his perspective.
Yeah, I remember him raising those concerns.
The elevators are finally in at Easy Storage. Only one of the three elevators was operating. All three now are operating, so they're, you know, they have a full occupancy. Uh, you know, when they opened up, of the 60 units downstairs, I think they had over 50 already leased out and a waiting list for all the others. And there, so I haven't checked up to see where they are now, but it seemed like it was doing great. In the front and on the lower level, we've released a permit for Doho. They will be providing, it's like a snack, an ice cream parlor and donuts, I think. That's part of their services, and they'll have a nice little outdoor area
Do they have
in
a
the front.
date,
So,
a potential date?
no, but the sign should, we issued the sign permit. It's an interior finish, so you know, assuming no hiccups, I would assume like around November.
It's a lot opening at end of
So-
year here. Okay.
Uh, and I think that kind of covers this. The Greenway is going great from Dealman to Warson Park. If you ever get a chance back there, I think all the concrete's now in place, and it is a really neat trail back there. It's off, you know, off road, and in this case, we have this, you know, a concrete stream channel, but there are some sections where it turns natural that it's like you're out in the, you know, out west. So it is kind of neat to see. And there, and that's all I can think of. If there's any other questions or so, or Don, do you have anything I missed?
I will say that the coffee with the mayor is missing from the list of upcoming events, but that was an oversight and I apologize, Mayor.
And we'll let the mayor address that because he does have a special guest for next week's.
Great. Thank you both. Missy.
Thank you all very much. I want to say this was a very good meeting tonight. I really appreciate each and every one of you. The Coffee with the Mayor will be on the 14th of August, and the guest will be Dr. I don't know if he's a doctor, but I'll say Dr. Jeffrey Macy or Macy. We're gonna have a Ladue representative at the Coffee for the Mayor to kind of talk about the upcoming school year. You know, what's new for K through 6 or 7, what's for the junior high, what's for the high school. So that'll be my guest, and I look forward to it. We have an election coming up on August 6th. Remember, you can vote anywhere you want now. I've been asked, will there be, where will they be in Olivet? They will be here at the City Center, and they will also be at the Olivet Community Center. They will also be across the street at the church, St. Peter's, St. Peter and Paul Church, right on the other side of Warson. You know, it might be a packed day, so you have various places to do your civic duty. We will continue to move forward with the comp plan, and I think all of our boards have been filled by the council, and it's a pleasure to have you, the new professional planner, on the board. And again, that's pretty much all I've got to kind of report for now. So again, always my appreciation to you all.
And Mayor, sorry to put you on the spot, Chairman, if I can. Regarding the petition.
Okay, so the petition has been, the residents of Olivet did get together a petition, and the Missouri Constitution for the recreational marijuana allows cities to, during presidential election years, to petition the cities to consider putting on the ballot, and actually petitioning if they get enough votes. It does get put on the ballot for the city to vote on whether they want to have dispensaries in their community. So the council will be addressing that on August 13th. And we will be doing a double reading so that we can get that to the Board of Elections for them to properly file it so that it is on the ballot.
November, it would be on the ballot.
It will be in the November ballot. It will always be every 4 years. Every 4 years, every city will have the opportunity to bring this back up during presidential election years. And that's only when they can do it, during presidential election years.
And I remember, if I not that I want to flash back to these conversations, but if I remember, Carlos, if someone had gotten a permit here and then this got voted out, they would lose the permit at that point, right? There's no
Well-
grandfathering in.
Let me address that to the best of my understanding. Lawyers have said to me, if that were to happen, there would be a major lawsuit. Now,
I imagine.
can it stop further dispensaries?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's different, but
Yeah. And so, my understanding from those that are deeply involved in it is that these businesses would clearly go and file a lawsuit, and they do not,
and based, without getting, yeah, that would be we fortunately will not have that problem either way. So, but, okay. Because that would be, I could see the lawsuit there.
right, that
Okay.
would, yeah, right.
Okay. Rob, you have something?
Yeah, I have something. I saw Mike Saunders last month. Mike Saunders, for those of you who don't know, he's a former PCDC member. He wanted to wish everybody, say hi to everybody, and he was very excited about all the developments that are going on and everything that we're doing here. So he will also want to say congratulations to us. So,
If you
and
still
one
see
other,
him, tell him I said hello if you're still able to see him now.
oh yeah, I might see him next month. So yeah, no problem. And then Brian, you did a great job so far. You made it. It was like I was on vacation.
You are failing at vacation, I'm gonna tell you, so. Well,
You made it a little bit better.
Thank you for calling in. So, all right, anyone have anything else before we close? Okay, not, we'll call the meeting to end at 9:27.
Take care, Rob. Take
Rob.
care.